All right, welcome everybody to the November IWB monthly meeting. For those new, welcome to your first IWB meeting. We are so excited for this meeting. We have a fantastic panel of speakers. We usually start with very brief announcements so that everybody kind of knows what's going on with the International Women in Biomechanics, and then we'll pass it off to our monthly meeting committee to get us started. So the first announcement is just hopefully you are all signed up for our listserv. If you're not, maybe Alexa, you could post the link to become a member or an ally and join our listserv. We have a monthly newsletter where we share all sorts of announcements, and we have a kind of a Slack roundup where we share every job posting, kind of resources between the community and so on. So it's really kind of helpful one-stop shop for everything IWB for the month. The first really big announcement is that IWB is officially a nonprofit organization. This is a huge achievement for us. We've been kind of working towards this for a couple of years now. We started with maybe like 30 people in this group in July 2020, and now we have over 700 people signed up as either members or allies from over 33 countries. So it's fantastic. We want to give a big thanks to the American Society of Biomechanics that provided some seed funding for us through the GRADE grant to get us established as a nonprofit. And what that means for all of you as members of our community, you'll see some more official domains. We have a intwomenbiomech.org domain now, so you'll see emails come from some new email addresses. There's some contacts here, more to come. And then you will probably see your name added to a Google group. You can unsubscribe at any time, but you'll see more streamlined communications through Google groups. I'm going to pass it to Liz to kind of give a recap of last month.
Great. Yes. So last month, what we did on the monthly meeting is we had some volunteer speakers who shared their research with us. What Anna has graciously done is link their name with their Twitter handle here. So if you had any lingering questions from watching the recording or attending the meeting, make a note and get in contact with them here. We also have a new YouTube page, which is very exciting, which is listed down at the bottom of this slide.
Thanks, Liz. One quick announcement also is that Freya couldn't be here, but part of our mission is increasing the visibility of women's science. And one way we do that is through Twitter posts and the paper of the quarter. So if you would like your paper highlighted, this is a great way to practice your science communication. Send Freya a message on Slack or message us, DM us on Twitter and get your paper highlighted through a series of tweets. I'll pass it to Alexa now.
I'm just going to give a quick recap of the blog. We've officially finished our recap from the NACOB workshop that we did for diversifying your workplace. So you can now find all of those on our blog. I'm going to similarly put out, if you're interested in writing a blog about your experiences in undergrad research, either as an undergrad or as a grad student or as somebody getting undergrads involved in research, we'd love to kind of like share those resources long and beyond this presentation. And one of the great ways we can do that is a blog and kind of link to all the YouTube videos, the recording of this, things like that. So if you'd be interested in writing that, please reach out to me. And then the other thing that we want to mention is that LGBTQ+ and STEM Day is on November 18th. And we want to highlight some of our LGBTQ+ members who are comfortable being highlighted on social media, mainly on Twitter. So we have a form if you want to submit your information to be highlighted. We're going to kind of post throughout the day, highlighting some of our LGBTQ+ members. And then also dropping some of those like inclusive workplace things that we wrote a blog about and like have some other ones about throughout the day, as long with highlighting our members. So there's a link in the chat or that QR code that exists if you can scan it fast enough before we go to the next slide. But we would love to highlight all of them. So please fill that out for us. And then I will be in touch with you kind of what that looks like for you via Twitter.
Thank you so much, Alexa. And all right, Anna Maria, do you want to talk about NBD?
Yeah, just a moment. So we have the National Biomechanics Day grant. This is for master or doctoral students in biomechanics, for those who want to create a National Biomechanics Day event. The aim of this grant is to promote women in biomechanics. The event that can be organized, it can be virtual as well. And if you feel like organizing a National Biomechanics Day event and you would like to get some support, then please apply for this grant by 15th of December. And please note that the deadline is changed. Yeah. And we have the Black History Month celebrating Black biomechanists. And the aim of this is to promote Black biomechanists worldwide and helping to move forward diversity within sports science. If you or someone you know is a Black biomechanist and wish to be highlighted, then please contact Romanda. You can see her contact information on this slide. Yeah, and then next slide, please. So the next meeting is going to be on 7th of December, and the theme of this meeting is holiday social. So please come and have some fun with us.
Thank you so much. We're excited to, we have a kind of an annual tradition of having our December meeting celebrate the holidays. So thank you all so much. All right, I will, with that, pass it off to Liz to get us started with this great panel.
Okay, great. So I just have a brief introduction here. So as you guys know, IWB is a community of over 500 members from over 150 universities and organizations across what I just heard was 33 now countries, with members who range from master's to PhD students to senior faculty and industry professionals. So we have this really diverse biomechanical background within our group, and we all have these different areas of study. But today as a group, we have a really unique opportunity to discuss the importance of extending our focus to include undergraduates. We really want to focus on the importance of the undergraduate research experience or undergraduate just biomechanics experience. And we have planned on targeting this issue by having a wonderful panel of experienced directors discuss their experiences with us. So Romanda and Anna Maria and I have organized some questions to just kind of lead the panel discussion. But before I introduce the speakers, I just want to ask Anna to stop sharing her screen and ask everyone here to turn on their camera if they're comfortable. We just want to have a discussion as a group. We definitely want to hear from the panel members, but feel free to contribute in the chat as an active member. And I just want to give some background on today's focus on the importance of undergraduate research before we introduce our speakers. So first, despite substantial advances and extensive efforts over the last decades, educational research really indicates that there are significant gaps that remain between the educational attainment of minority students and their majority peers. So this really shows that we should have a specific current concern within students who focus on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or within what we call the STEM field. Commonly, undergraduate research programs are really promoted as one possible solution to help address this attainment gap and increase the number of underrepresented minority students in STEM. These programs have been shown to increase students' intentions of enrolling in graduate or professional school and may really be one way where our IWB community can start to help the next generation of researchers. When I was reviewing some STEM-focused research for this meeting, I was surprised to see that self-report analyses of skill development shows that participation in undergraduate research programs significantly improves students' probability of indicating plans to enroll in grad school. And empirical assessments really show evidence that undergraduate research experiences increase skills such as duration, autonomy, collaboration, and motivation. Personally, in my limited mentoring experience, I really do think this is an important focus that we should continue to promote. And I think beyond personal, resume advances of participating in undergraduate research, we should be clear that our labs also benefit from having a new perspective on the team. So that said, what I want to do is introduce our speakers and then start our conversation with a few questions that we'll read and then put in the chat. I'll throw it over to Anna Maria to start the introductions.
Okay, so Dr. Walter Herzog is Associate Dean, Professor in the Faculties of Kinesiology and Engineering and Director of the Human Performance Lab of the University of Calgary. His research focuses on the neurobiomechanics of the musculoskeletal system. He examines the mechanisms of muscle contraction, focusing on the role of the structural protein, titin, and the biomechanics of joints, focusing on the mechanisms of onset and progression of osteoarthritis. He received his first and second diploma in physical education from the Federal Technical Institute, Zurich, then his PhD in biomechanics from the University of Iowa. Then he had a postdoc position at the University of Calgary in 1987, and he has been working at the University of Calgary ever since. He supervised more than 32 master's students and 30 PhD students. 117 awards were granted to students and postdoctoral trainees that were under his supervision. He received several awards for his outstanding supervisory work. He has recently been awarded one of Canada's most prestigious honors for a scientist, the Killam Prize Award. The last time this prize was given to the University of Calgary was in 1991. Professor Walter Herzog is called the rock star of biomechanics. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and we are very excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, we really have an all-star lineup. Next up to introduce is Dr. Ann Silverman, who is the director of the Functional Biomechanics Lab and an associate professor of mechanical engineering at the school that introduced me to engineering, the Colorado School of Mines. Her research centers on understanding musculoskeletal biomechanics and movement coordination to develop effective training interventions, prevent injury, and improve mobility. She really has a background in mechanical engineering from both Arizona State University and in graduate degrees from the University of Texas at Austin. I cut her bio a little short today because what I want to focus on is that she advises many graduate and undergraduate students within her lab, and importantly is an active IWB member. Thank you, Dr. Silverman, and we can't wait to hear your perspective today.
And our third speaker is Dr. Jason Franz, Associate Professor in the Joint Department of Biomedical Engineering and Director of Applied Biomechanics Laboratory, UNC Chapel here. He is an expert in neuromuscular biomechanics, sensory motor control, aging, and age-related mobility impairment. The mission of his laboratory is to preserve independent mobility and prevent falls in our aging population. This is accomplished through scientific, technological, and translational innovation. He received his bachelor and master degrees in engineering mechanics from Virginia Tech, then his PhD in integrative physiology from the University of Colorado Boulder. His laboratory is very active scientifically. He advised and advises several postdoctoral trainees, doctoral students, master students, visiting students, and undergraduate students in the past more than years. So thank you very much for being here with us today, and we are looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
Great, thanks, Anna Maria. Okay, so as you heard, all of our panel members really have a lot of experiencing mentoring students across many different stages of their career. So our first question, I've also put it in the chat, is for our panel members, how did you really learn to be a mentor? And how have you balanced this responsibility while directing a lab and meeting other academic career requirements? And you'll have to just
jump
work
in.
out.
So learning how to be a mentor is a really, it's a challenging thing that we're not specifically explicitly trained for. And I think what I've done is you learn and have successes and failures a lot along the way. And so really you just gain experience with every new person that you come in contact with. And of course, I've been very lucky to have excellent mentors of my own in my career. And I feel like there's an element of taking what really worked for you or what you really admired and trying to implement that as best as you can.
And summed up the entire response. I was gonna just to echo, you know, many of us are very fortunate to have been mentored by role models, and we see behaviors that we want to emulate. And I 100% have done that. I've considered myself extraordinarily fortunate to do that. You know, we're not all in that position, and we don't have this formal training, much like teaching and service. We're not given formal training and mentorship. And so it's always learn as you go. I was reading a paper yesterday on work balance. And you ask questions about how do you successfully mentor while doing all the other things. But for me, you know, and I think it'd be true for Walter and Ann as well, you know, one of the reasons we're in this profession and we get up in the morning is to do just that, to go in, check on our students, our trainees, see how they were doing. How was your evening, your weekend? And it's just such a core focus of who we are and what we do that we almost prioritize that. And then the question is, how do we find time to write the grants and the papers?
So maybe I can just add a couple of thoughts here about, you know, learning how to be a mentor. I'm probably a couple of years older than Jason and Anne, and there was really no mentorship training in my days. I mean, there was nobody around that said, oh, this is how you do it and that type, how you do it. What we have implemented here, you know, in our faculty for many, many years now, and I assume that's probably standard everywhere else, is that we have mentorship programs. So when, for example, when a new biomechanist comes in, so I want to mention Brent Edwards, when he came in 7 or 8 years ago, then I was assigned to be his mentor. So I was looking after how he's writing his grants, advising what to do, the Canadian system, all those type of things. And so I guess we try to do it proactively. In terms of mentoring students and trainees, and so like the other two panelists, I've always made that a big priority in my life. And so I've set part of my week aside specifically for that. So every Thursday morning, we have a group meeting where the entire group is there, and we give updates and we do administrative things and we chat to each other. And then every Friday from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, I've set aside half-hour blocks where I meet with my trainees. So I formally meet with them every week. And what I find very interesting is that many of the students, they talk about the progress and the work and the problems and that type of thing. But having set aside that formal half hour, very, very often I'll get integrated into their private life and certain private problems that people might have. And I think the other thing that I might want to add is that over the years, I found that mentoring is very different for different people and different students. So for example, you know, some people, they just see me on the Fridays at their regular appointments and that's it, you know, and then otherwise they go their own way. But I'm thinking particularly about one student who's not here anymore, but she probably saw me 2 or 3 times a day. Would just pop in whenever something happened, you know, I meet when something happened in the lab, something, you know, she immediately wanted to chat about that, instantaneously, just for 2 minutes. And I think so. I think there's a good thing that there's an awareness that some people want to interact more, and some for them it's almost a duty to come once a week, and they rather only would come once a month type of a thing. And so I think every student is a bit different, and I think one needs to recognize that different people have different needs in that sense.
Great, and I would just like to remind all the audience that you're free to share your own thoughts with us in the chat. I'm going to really try to compile some advice for the summary of this meeting, so that would be very helpful.
And I was going to share with Walter that I'm going to take notes myself.
I started taking notes as well.
Mentors need mentorship too, of course.
Maybe
Great.
we can move to the next question. So the next question is, when preparing for this meeting, I came across many articles about the benefits of undergraduate research for students. How do you view or describe benefits for undergraduate students, your lab, your department, or program? For example, when the undergraduates are involved, do they see things from a totally different perspective or view?
I think that's a great question, and completely agree. I find a couple key things. One is that I think all people who are involved in research tend to have enthusiasm for research, or we wouldn't be there. But I do find there is an energy and an enthusiasm that undergraduates in particular bring when they're learning about something brand new. And we see that really affect everyone in the group. As a new addition and maybe new to the fields, there's just a lot of breath and life that gets injected into people, maybe senior PhD students who've been here for a long time and are trying to finish up. So I think there's an aspect there. They definitely bring unique perspectives. One thing that I find particularly from undergraduates is they seem to just be so engaged in the campus community and resources that maybe other students know about, but not quite as intimately, or they're involved in a student organization. And so there's just a lot of resources and potentially perspectives or things on campus that they know about that maybe hasn't made its way into the group yet. And I think benefits from the department level and the school level is that really undergraduates seem to be our best ambassadors. If one student has a good experience, then suddenly there are 10 who are now excited to join, and not just one research group, but every research group. And they talk to prospective students, and that really just helps us all grow and become better. So I think I have a few others, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
There's something important I wanted to share. So I'm the director of well-being for our department. It's a new charge, and it's not well defined, but one thing we did recently do, I'm still pouring through the data to discuss at the end of the week, is to distribute a climate survey to all of our undergraduates for mental health and well-being. And in the open responses, a significant theme was this overall feeling of isolation and not knowing what resources are available. So, I'm speaking to a benefit to the undergraduate here. Research as community and as a solution for that feeling of isolation, I think can go a really long way. I also started hosting undergraduate lab tours. So just about 3 weeks ago, so the third year we've done it. Bringing all of the undergraduates in our department together. We don't have a huge department, so there's only about 100 undergrads on my campus in our department. And we go around and we tour all the research labs in BME, and we meet with the professors. And this is actually speaking to a benefit on the faculty of engaging with undergrads. I've had many, this just happened a couple of weeks ago, the faculty coming back the next day and sharing that they haven't felt that excited talking about their research in a long time, because there was just this feeling of enthusiasm and excitement about participating, and that resonates a lot with faculty, even for students that don't know exactly what they want to get involved with. Learning what you don't want to do is almost as productive and valuable as learning what you absolutely love. And so just getting that survey of the different opportunities and experiences, it's been tremendous for us. And you know, graduate student mentoring experiences. How do you learn to mentor? Trial and error, and hopefully you get that opportunity as a grad student and as a postdoc. And doing that through outstanding undergraduates is a great first step.
Some really good points. And so Jason, we don't have 100 undergraduate students, but we have a little bit over 1,000. So we are in a different position here. But the one thing that I might wanted to add is that here at our university, through the president and the provost, so the two highest people in our university, experiential learning for undergraduate students has been made a priority, and the university has dedicated monies towards that. And so we have a formal program in the summer where we have, our school ends at the end of May and then starts again in early September. So there's 4 months in the summer there. And so students can apply for scholarships, and they're fairly competitive, but many students get these scholarships, and then they can work and do research in a laboratory for 4 months, and they get paid for it. It's not like a full pay, but they get a fairly decent scholarship. And so that's one way that we have these summer studentships, as we call it. And usually in the past few years, in the past 10 years, we probably averaged about 5 or 6 summer students every year that are supervised by students. The other thing, because of that mandate by the university to offer experiential learning, we have a course specifically designated in biomechanics to do research. So it's a project course. So there, the students don't get paid for it, but they take for 2 semesters this particular course, and then they get credit for it. And it's a project, so they are integrated into the program. And then aside from that, we also have an honors program that is available to all students, and they can do projects as well. And the last thing I wanted to get a little bit to the one point that I saw in the chat there, how do you balance the research with the requirements that students have? And I think that's a very, very delicate question. And, when we have summer students that are here 4 months full time and they're paid for it, we have completely different expectations. So we expect them to be here every day, 9 to 5 type of a thing. But when they take a project course, then we are aware that they have 3 or 4 other courses, and there typically the mandate is that the project that we give them will be something like a course load. It will be 6, 8, or 10 hours per week that we expect them to dedicate, and therefore the project will be smaller and more prescribed. So that's kind of how we handle it. And maybe just to add to that, I wanted to emphasize what Anne and Jason said. Undergraduate research in Canada, tremendously important if you want to go to graduate school, or also the medical school, which a lot of people would want to do. And I'm not sure in other countries, but I don't have the science to back this up. But when you just see the results, who gets into medical school, who gets into graduate school, and who gets the scholarships, then that depends very, to a great degree on, I've done 3 summer studentships in different areas, and I've given a couple of presentations. I even have a paper, that makes a big difference.
So just by a show of hands for everyone that's here, who participated in undergraduate research when they are an undergrad? I always have to figure out how to share hands. Yeah, we have to do it like this. Yeah, so quite a bit. I think that's why this is so important to us as biomechanists, is you don't become a biomechanist if you don't know what it is. You have to get that initial experience. Okay, so our next question really deals with involvement. Just paste it in the chat. So we were wondering if you could share your experience on getting students involved initially. So how do you get undergraduates really interested in doing research in the first place? Do they contact you, or have you ever reached out to students that are doing well in your course? Also, if you could just talk about if you notice if men or women are more interested in volunteering in your lab typically, and if you could share any expertise on who is the ideal undergraduate student.
Series of really great questions. So in my experience, I would say the majority have approached me. It's not something where I felt I've had trouble finding people who are interested. It's more about the bandwidth on the lab side of how many people we can mentor. But I do think it is important to, when you are recruiting for a specific position, that you advertise widely. And I think there's a couple really good ways to do that. One recommendation I would have is, I think many universities have a lot of centralized resources, and they're going to look a little different depending on your institution. But at Mines in particular, we do have an undergraduate research centralized office that has a very specific timeline about particular fellowships that they offer during the following academic year or summer experiences. And so it's very straightforward how to put a title out there and make sure it gets to a lot of undergraduates. I've certainly advertised in my classes. Another thing I've done is with sort of unexpected, it wasn't intentional, but I have some colleagues who we might chat about the content in their classes, and they might be teaching something that I wouldn't typically teach, but there's a very clear biomechanics application, and I might supply them data for an assignment. So an example is, here's some position data as a function of time, and the assignment is to use numerical methods to find the velocity and acceleration in one of our math courses. And I'm suddenly I get some emails of, oh, we worked on some data from your lab in my class, and I'd love to learn more. And so I think if there's ways that you can get people in your university to know what you're doing, then word gets around. And I would say the same thing is true for student organizations. If you serve on a panel, there's great ways to attract people. What I look for in an ideal researcher would be some dedication and enthusiasm, because we can always teach skills and learn new software and learn new experimentation, but having the time dedicated is an important aspect of things. And it's useful to have those meetings in order to display your enthusiasm. I have about an equal mix of male and female. I don't think one is particularly easier to attract than another. And I think those were the three. Did I cover everything? Great.
And you did such a good job. Whenever I get multiple layered questions, by the time I answer the second one, I've since forgotten number 3 and number 4. The people here, I'll also notice in the chat, Walter, I had to edit myself. That was 100 students per year. So we have about 300 per campus overall.
Yep.
Yeah, a few things come to note here. Like Anne, it is not difficult to attract undergraduate students. One thing I will mention there, I'm a first generation college student myself, and I think those individuals that come from a place of privilege may be more inclined to have the confidence to email a professor and say, I love the work you do, and I would love to participate in research. That isn't to say that I'm also not engaged with, at UNC, the Chancellor Science Scholars Program is identifying these really promising young individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds and placing them in the opportunity to succeed in research and go on to professional schools. But I think we need to think about ways of making, just sort of bridging that gap and reducing barriers to participation in undergraduate research. The ideal student, for me, people get really nervous, undergrads, that they have to know all the things and they have to have the skills already. And I try to sort of alleviate some of that anxiety, because a lot of undergraduate research is learning while you go. You're not going to learn the entire MATLAB textbook before you're going to be successful in research, right? You're going to go in, and there's going to be certain parts of a piece of software or a piece of equipment that you're going to learn. So for me, enthusiasm is one. personal anecdotes can go a long way. Personal reasons for being involved in biomechanics is very easy. A lot of us have personal, deep experiences in our lives with individuals that are having mobility deficits, or you know, we're active in athletics, and biomechanics is such an accessible field that a lot of the emails I get that I'm most interested in following, I mean, I follow up with all of them, but those that pique my interest the most are they have that story about why they're interested, and that enthusiasm is one thing I definitely look for. I'm also looking for, I want to be confident you're going to show up. I have been ghosted, and undergrads that show up turn out to be the most successful undergrads in research, and it can be really difficult to figure out exactly who's going to be who. And there, see, and I'm already forgetting, BME tends to be, of the engineering disciplines, highly equitable in terms of the distribution of men and women participating in that field. And I think in our department, the student body and those that participate in research and those in my lab, yeah, it's about 50-50. And the tours that we do have been incredibly successful and an accessible way of promoting research in general, getting them interested in doing research in the first place. Show up at this time, protect the next 2 hours, 3 hours, and this is what we're going to talk about and learn about. Panel discussions and opportunities to ask questions in a safe place, and learn those things that maybe, you know, you're not hearing from your parents or from your neighbors or your relatives about their experiences participating in undergraduate research. Sorry, long-winded answer.
Long-winded, but very thoughtful. And I'm going to be quick here because I'm really just re-emphasize, particularly what Anne said resonated with me in the sense that she said, you know, she's getting more people that want to come and work with her than she can accommodate. And for us, it's almost embarrassing because I'm getting 40 to 50 applications for summer studentships, and I can take 5, maybe 6, because that's all we can cover. So it's, you know, so 10% of all the people that want to come to us. Fortunately, we can distribute some to other laboratories in the human performance lab, but there's a lot of students that want to come, and at the end of the day are not going to be able to come. So that's never been a problem. We tend to get more women, but I think that's just a reflection of the population in Canada. Women outnumber men 57% to 43% on the undergraduate level. And in kinesiology in our faculty, it's over 70% women than men. And so and therefore that's reflected in our numbers. Like last year, I think we had 5 women and 2 men as our undergraduate summer students. And so it's just a reflection of just the numbers that we have. The ideal summer student is, for me, passionate. I don't really care about the background. I don't care about what they've done. I don't care what they want to do. And so if they seem to be passionate about what we are doing and they can convince me of that, then they have a leg up and they're more likely to get in than somebody who seems less passionate but might have a great point average. So I'm looking for these people that really want to come. Not sure if you can identify that. The other thing that I wanted to mention about underrepresented groups, again, I find Calgary in that respect really good. So for example, we have this NSF equivalent for the United States. It's called the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. And they give summer studentships as well. And our faculty is usually assigned 2 of these. But for a few years now, if you have an Indigenous candidate, then that candidate doesn't count towards your total. And so, for example, last year we got our 2 from the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council that were allocated to us, but then there were 3 additional students that we could admit because they were Indigenous. And so there is active encouragement from the university and active support to be able to hire and support undergraduate students that are typically underrepresented. And then the only other thing I wanted to say is that we also have a couple of memoranda of understanding with foreign universities where we have regular undergraduate student exchanges, and I'd be happy to hear from other people, because that works really well, except for one thing, and that is the whole immigration and visa procedures for undergraduate students. It's really simple to bring in a graduate student as a visiting student for half a year, and for us, it's an absolutely administrative nightmare to bring undergraduate students across the border. I'd be curious to hear if that's similar in other countries as well.
Walter, I'm up against the same thing every year. I've been given a hard no from my institution that without a bachelor's degree, we can accept visiting scholars to perform research activities with us. Even when we're describing how rich this experience would be, life-changing this experience would be, but the US policies, at least at our institution, it is not the same at every institution. But
we can still do it, but it's only possible because with these couple of universities, we have a memorandum of understanding, and that allows us under very strict rules and strict regulations and strict this and that and long processes to bring them in. But I find that really sad. I'm going to work here at my place to try to change that. That's kind of one of my goals, that it's easier for us to bring in students from underrepresented, biomechanically, scientifically underrepresented, and also economically disadvantaged countries. And that's kind of the memorandum of understanding we have is with South America from countries where it's not that easy to do research.
Our next question is about support. When gathering information for this meeting, I was surprised that many undergraduates were posting questions online about how to politely drop out of undergraduate research. The first question was already discussed a bit, but I still ask. So as a mentor, how have you had students find balance and time in their schedules to perform research? How do you set appropriate goals and workload? How do you keep students motivated? And how could your undergraduates be better supported by external groups like IWB?
So how to balance sort of the time spent on research, I feel like it's very helpful to set clear timelines and deadlines and have sort of structured meetings in place so there are frequent check-ins. So I think for each individual student, a particular program they're in or their particular demands, there's an important aspect of project scope. And Walter touched on this a bit, is it 5 hours a week or is it 40 hours a week during the summer? That's going to be a very different kind of project, but still both will be fruitful research experiences. So I do the timelines, goals, structured meetings, and understanding their goals about what they want to get out with research and make sure that we can attain that. And because we have that structure, we're able to pivot as things change about a project, which they inevitably do. I think that in terms of keeping students motivated, and I would say it's the same for keeping faculty motivated and keeping mentors motivated, as I'm a very big advocate of celebrating all of the small wins that happen on a very quick basis. I think in academia and in research, we're always very willing to celebrate that notice of award or that publication, and we absolutely should. But I do think it's really important to celebrate, oh, well, I submitted that fellowship application, or I submitted that abstract, or I have a really cool plot that I spent all week on, and really sort of building that community. So I have a feeling I forgot one of the questions, though.
So how do you think your undergrads could be better supported by organizations like IWB?
That's the one. I think the biggest thing is creating a support network and I think IWB does that exceptionally well. So just I feel like there are the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns when it comes to research and mentoring and professional opportunities. And so really so much is just about communication. So reaching out to undergrads directly and making them aware of undergrad fellowship opportunities or potential pathways, how you apply to grad school, I think those are all really wonderful things.
I might, because I don't want to forget that one, I might start at that one. And something that you did at the beginning of this meeting, I think is going to go a long way, which is showcasing the people and the experiences and the successes of, in this case, graduate students, faculty. You're like, let us promote you. And I think even when you're not including undergraduates in that experience directly, I do think that showing what it can be like to participate in undergraduate research, what it looks like to be successful, is celebrating the small wins, as Anne said, and seeing people like you on social media doing things that you find interesting and engaging, I think has unmeasurable effect. I think that's wonderful. That first question about dropping out of undergraduate research, I think it's easy. Like I said, a good mentor should understand that you deciding to try out undergraduate research in any one lab is just that. And I recently had one of the most ambitious, driven, and dedicated students in my lab, and I would have kept him or her forever. Stay in grad school, stay as a postdoc, just stay here forever. And he or she decided that, you know, they want to go into more of a neuroscience field. That's how it happens. You're supposed to be here to support them as a mentor. And I think I would just encourage the students to feel very comfortable having candid and open conversations, and then they'll get the most out of that. Keeping students motivated. The word community was mentioned, and I think that has everything to do with it. I think engaging undergraduates in the social events, the laboratory meetings, the workshops, the department seminars of interest, engaging them in the conversations, making them part of the team. They are colleagues in your lab. And I think that if you give them the sense that they are actually contributing in intellectually meaningful ways, even if they don't know that when you push that button, that green light turns on, and if you connect this to this in the lab, that fans, like, you don't need to know all the things to really feel valued, and any way you can do that is the way to go. Balance and schedules. I mean, our undergraduate students, like many of yours, or you, if you're listening to this, you know, you're not just going to classes, you have extracurricular activities. Many of you have athletics, and you're getting up to train or go to the gym at 5 before class. There's just so much nowadays, I think way more than 20 years ago when I was an undergraduate. I just dated myself. That I do think that small tangible goals, especially early on in the onboarding process when I don't know anything, really tangible goals, routine and frequent check-ins. And I think that's the opportunity when you do more actively engage your more senior lab members to participate in that mentorship process, and have meetings without the undergraduate with your grad student or postdoc about what it means to mentor, how you go about it, to have this conversation. Maybe I'll just play this video for them from now on, and then, you know, Anne, Walter, and the rest of us that are faculty, we can do our work balance a little bit easier. And how to support, back to that last question again, social media has become an incredibly valuable and important tool. I had no idea how engaging it can be with so many individuals. And I think between IWB, BBA, Latinx and Biomechanics, ASB, ISB, our societies, we're more and more starting to value the role that we can play on social media to embrace that. And in partnering with National Biomechanics Day and the grants services, I mean, we are really in service to K through 12 education and undergraduates in terms of trying to provide a pipeline into biomechanics in grad school or industry.
just going to quickly talk about the aspect of motivation. And I want to start out with a little story. Many, many years ago, one of my senior colleagues asked me, why would you take on undergraduate students? You know, I mean, why would you do that work and they don't know anything and anything? And my answer was, you don't need a PhD behind your name to be clever. You know, because there's many undergraduate students that are as clever and cleverer than I am and my students are. And so I actually find it always very refreshing. And all of a sudden you get that really a clever undergraduate student that is rough, you know, hasn't had the training, but you realize they are really good. But motivation, I've thought about that a lot. And one of the things that I try to do, particularly with the summer students, I try to give them a project that's not part of a bigger project where they just do one aspect. And so, but what I try to do, and I know that's sometimes difficult, doesn't always work, but what I try to do at least is give them a teeny tiny question that is really their independent project. And I think giving them the ownership of their own project that's not part of another one, I think at least is motivating for them. And then since it's their project and that's what they try to solve, they are also the ones then that can write up a little abstract or a paper if it comes to that point. And regarding that, you know, like presenting, we have several things in place again in Calgary that work really well. So always at the end of the summer, we have a biomedical engineering undergraduate student symposium. And so there's about 60 undergraduate students that will present their summer work at the end of August, and gives them the opportunity to give a 10-minute talk and present what they have done. Then we also have this Alberta Biomedical Engineering Conference that we just had last weekend, which is normally for graduate students. But some 10 years ago, I said, well, we need to invite undergraduate students as well. And so undergraduate students that are in the summer with me and have a project and have some results, I pay for them to go for a weekend to the mountains, to Banff, where this Alberta Biomedical Engineering Conference is. And so one of the motivations is that, oh, if you get this done, you get some results and it's meaningful. We send you there if you want to. And so that works really well. And then also in the faculty, we have this, at the end of the year, we have this undergraduate research symposium for one day. It's called Research Revealed. And there all the kinesiology students, usually towards the end of March, so about 2 weeks before the semester officially finishes and before they go into the exam period, they have the possibility to present as well in a formal symposium that we put on. So I think those type of things keep students motivated to a certain degree, or at least I hope they do.
And would you say that Mines has those types of opportunities? Because I would say UNC and NC State do these days that undergrads are we call it the celebration of undergraduate research. Does Mines have something similar?
We do have an undergraduate research symposium every year in the spring, and it's very motivating because you see research from all across campus and in so many different areas.
I think most universities have adopted that type of thing and realizing how important that is.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for that. As we reach the top of the hour here, we just want to conclude by giving you a chance to describe both your greatest successes as well as your greatest failures related to directing or supporting or just being involved with undergraduate research.
It's a great question and a tough one, I think. So greatest successes, I think, for me, that's going to vary a lot with the student. But to me, if we both learn something from each other, it is a success. And also, I think it's related to something Jason was saying. You know, it really is student focused in terms of what they want to get out of this research. So obviously, if they do an amazing job and we get a great paper and we go to a national conference, those are all really huge wins. But there can also be a huge win of, well, I completed this study and I contributed really thoughtfully, and I realized I'm just so excited about design and I'm going to get this amazing internship this summer where I get to focus on that. And I feel like all of those are a great win. From a failure perspective, I think the biggest challenges for me is that I think we can all agree research is really hard work. And from an outside perspective, if you've never done it before, it can look like it was much easier than it actually was when you have a finished product. And so sometimes it's hard to know how much time research is going to take. And I think we all struggle with that, but particularly if you're new to research, you might not realize the work or the time that is really needed to get what you want to get done. And from a failure perspective, that sort of means is we didn't really meet our objectives, or potentially, the student got really busy with other commitments and it wasn't a priority. And so we didn't have the conclusion that we both wanted. But they're all still learning experiences. So I always consider that to be a success.
Yeah, and that was super. My first thought when we saw some of these questions and topics a few days ago was that the successes were going to come in the form of products, like Anne mentioned, with a fellowship or a paper or attending a conference. But then over the course of the few days, I got an email from a student that had been in my lab, and they simply emailed us a 2-line email. It was simply to say, look what just happened. And that thing was, she had this achievement in her career, and she just emailed to let me know. And I think, undergraduates give us the opportunity to broaden our professional network to people who are at the stage of their career where they're going to have these rapid transitions and professional achievements, and it's just so exciting to watch. So I would say that those are the successes for me personally. Those emails when they come in, it's just tremendous to see. I've mentioned getting ghosted, like in terms of failures, one thing I wanted to point out, just to emphasize that it is not a failure if you get into undergraduate research and you totally dislike what you do, or for those of us that are mentors, if you have an undergraduate that comes to you in this case and says, I don't like what I'm doing. If they're brave enough to say that, embrace that and lean into it, and really just do your best to try and find what it is that would enrich their lives and meet their expectations for what they want their undergraduate career to be. And so my biggest failure is just to tell you that it's not a failure when that happens.
So I must admit to my shame that I actually didn't really read the questions very carefully before this. I wasn't really prepared for this one. But in terms of greatest success, I know that I was very, very emotional once when I was invited to give a keynote lecture. And in fact, I had to take 30 seconds before I could take my lecture because I was so emotionally taken away by the introduction that a person had given to me. And when I was a graduate student at the University of Iowa, we were asked to teach certain courses. And so I taught an undergraduate biomechanics course. And this one person came in with this baby, in front of his, just the baby thing. It's like a very, very young, like 3, 4, 5 months old. And the baby started crying and he had to leave the class, and the baby started crying, had to leave the laboratory. And so he wasn't doing very well. And I'm teaching the class. I'm saying, look, I'm a student, you're a student. I don't want to let you fail. And so I said, look, that's what we're going to do. Thursday after the laboratories, you stay here. I go through the homework with you. And, because I realize you have this baby and obviously needs to come to class. And so I helped him, that type of thing. So years and years later, about 20 years later, that person, I didn't even know that was a professor, and organized a conference and invited me and told that story. But what he told in that particular story is the background of the story, which I didn't know at all. And the background was that this person had come from California with his wife, youngly married, just had a child. They were there. And then within a few weeks of being there, his wife left him. They got divorced, but she left the baby with him. So here he was at the beginning of his studies and in a different place, baby, no wife, and really was thinking about dropping out of school. And then he said, and because of me and me helping him getting through that course, not doing very well, but getting through and passing somehow, that then motivated him staying in school, going to graduate school, getting a PhD, becoming a professor. And I wasn't aware of the background at all, and we never discussed that. And so I felt that, you know, when I think about success, I guess that's where I made a difference in somebody's life, and I think that's great. And you know, I was very proud, and I remember I was very emotionally taken aback there when I heard the background of the story, which I never knew. Failures, there's too many to tell. You know, I feel, you know, students drop out of undergraduate, they drop out of graduate school. Those are always hard for me, particularly when I have the feeling that maybe I could have done more. I could have been more attentive. I could have. So I think that's always a bit hard for a supervisor when, in one way or another, a student quits on the undergraduate or graduate level. So there's too many to talk about, but I think those are the ones that I really think of as, well, failures and disappointments. And, you know, you always ask yourself, could I have done something else? Could I have done it better?
Very much for this beautiful story. Since it's approaching the end of our meeting, I would like to thank to our panelists, Dr. Herzog, Dr. Silverman, and Dr. Franz again for taking the time to share their expertise with us. And I also would like to thank our members, and we will share the recordings of this meeting soon and have a slide to review this meeting next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.